Good afternoon, good evening, good morning, wherever you are, and welcome to NerdTube. And we're talking Moon Knight, Season 1, Episode 5, Asylum. I'm here with my usual cohort when it comes to Moon Knighting, and that is Gary Dam. How you doing, mate?
I'm doing all right. How are you doing?
I'm doing very well, my friend. Very well. This was a very interesting episode. I had a feeling it would be one of these mindfuck episodes, and it definitely delivered in that mindfuckery for sure. Before we start breaking it down and talking about this episode in bits, bit by bit, how did you find it, mate?
Um, Overall, I thought it was a really, really good episode. I mean, it was very. It wasn't a action, but I think that was the whole point. It was all about
Mm-hmm.
dealing with the spiritual, the metaphysical, and the psychological. So dealing with those three things themselves, and I found it really interesting because it was interesting to talk, to dealing with the metaphysical. Like I didn't recognise that there were other uh, pantheons out there or other theologies out there, which is always interesting. And I thought it was good to see his to see Mark's story. I mean, like because it's Mark and Stephen's story, and how the two became intertwined and all that sort of stuff. It's great. Oh,
Well, I did very much appreciate the duality of our two protagonists, so to speak. I think it was very well filmed, and I very much appreciated that. I almost forgot there was one actor in this. You know, you would have thought there was two versions of fucking Oscar Isaac. It was really well done. The directing to bring that to life. You know, having both of these guys on screen together. You know, one man playing off himself, so to speak. Brilliant, absolutely brilliant. You had a curry sandwich. I guess that's my mate Photoshop. Yes, I hope you enjoyed it. Welcome Nerdverse as well. Daniel Vance, I know it's a bit early. I do apologize. But that's how it goes, mate. We did it for somebody who's not actually here with us. Can you believe it? Our usual guy who does this with us is not with us, and we're doing it early because he wanted us to do it early. But anyway, nevertheless, let's stop complaining and start talking. All right. So, in this episode called The Asylum, we see a very quick clip of this lady going, "It's all your fault," and then we hear Hippo Lady screaming. We see Mark and Steve screaming, and they're jumping between these sort of realities. Um, Now we're told by Dr. Ned Flanders here, played by um, Ethan Hawke, playing a version of Harrow, so to speak, that he is in the Putnam psychic ward in Illinois, which is apparently something that comes from the comics. And he mentions, and this talking hippo is a new thing for Harrow, as far as he's concerned, because he Dr. Harrow, that is, does know about these sort of split personalities, but
yeah,
the hippo is a new one. So he's trying to understand and make sense of, and he's basically telling Mark. I got to remind myself who I'm on about here. Telling Mark that a talking hippo is either sense or nonsense, and Mark agrees that it's nonsense. But we have seen a talking raccoon, and a talking tree. So in this universe, so maybe it's not too much of a nonsense, so to speak. But nevertheless, and they've seen fucking aliens as well. You know, these people would know about aliens of various types coming on their planet, but nevertheless, it's nonsense. Harrow thinks he can, but Harrow does believe that this hippo is some sort has some sort of part to play in these mind games of Mark. And regarding the childhood of Harrow believes that this hippo can help him understand Mark's childhood a little bit better. Mark grabs the sharp. Now Mark is a bit fucked in the head here. He grabs the sharp object. Obviously, Harrow realizes that he's trying to do something devious. Gets his orderlies to come in. They sedate Mark, and this returns him to the screaming hippo scene alongside Stephen. How did he find all of that at the very beginning?
It was interesting because it's interesting to see, how much of this was, well, legit. How much was good. I mean, as I said, one thing I loved about this was the fact that we have. I'm trying to find a way to say that that's not going to sound too negative because most of what I have to say is positive. But the that there is like an air of mystery, like how much of this is real, how much of this imagined. I think it's all real personally, but that's just my personal opinion, and that it's just a great, 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 great. So
Don't worry about that comment. Don't worry about that comment. He's throwing you off. But okay, look, let's just proceed. Yeah, Hippo lady who comes she comes across as one of those sort of friendly fat girls you meet in life. You know what I'm on about?
Yeah,
Yeah, and she kind of then puts our guys to ease after they stop, freaking out over a talking giant hippo dressed as an Egyptian goddess, and she explains to them that they're in some sort of limbo right now, and they are dead, because their brains won't understand, the real sort of what limbo is, so to speak. It basically creates a vision of what limbo is for their brain to understand. In this particular case, is a psychic ward, an asylum, and Mark believes, because we have Stephen and Mark here, that Mark believes that the reason why their brain has created this vision of their limbo is because they're fucking insane. They have split personalities. They think there's some sort of mummified, vigilante. They're fucking insane, which is why they're in an asylum. Now, Mark then has another tantrum, and then he ends up opening up one of the ward doors, and it leads them onto this barge. And they're now going through the sands on this barge. This barge is sailing on sand, Bossman, and it's taking them to their purgatory, or not their purgatory, but they're basically their end game, so to speak. Are they going to be resurrected? Are they going to go to heaven? Are they going to go to hell? The Egyptian version of it, so to speak. And Hippo Lady then puts her hands inside the chests of both Mark and Stephen and grabs white versions of their hearts and puts it on the scale against this feather. And if it balances, then they're cool. But if it doesn't balance, they go to hell. But the thing is, the scale is constantly going up and down. It's not stopping. So there's no real balance on the scales. So that, in a way, makes Hippo Lady wonder what the fuck's going on. Now, she says the scales are always moving due to these guys having to find out more about their past. So we now then go on to like a sort of like not an origin story, but like a backstory. Like understanding the history of our character, so to speak.
yeah.
And when they go back to the ward and they see different rooms of their past and end up in a room full of Mark's murder victims. So, what did you think about all of this? Like this barge. I mean, this was a real mindfuck of an episode, and it's already fucking you up. Like you don't know what reality is what going on right now. 1 minute, we're in Arthur Harrow, Dr. Arthur Harrow's office. Then he gets sedated, and then he's talking to a bloody talking hippo alongside Steven. And then they're on this barge and shit like that. What the fuck is going on, boss man?
Well, again, I know a little bit about Egyptology, something that I look into. So, in the Egyptology, that hippo god is basically the, along with Osiris, are the two people who try and take people to the underworld. So the thing that they're doing at the moment is a representation, the Hellenistic one, which basically means it's taken from other traditions as well. These are Greek ones, and that's infused into what we consider Greek.
Like Hades and stuff like that. Like this is But it's not necessarily underworld. It's afterlife. It could be heaven. It could be hell. You know what I mean?
Yeah. So there's a lot of like Western influence. And Western, I don't mean Christian. I mean Western as in like Greek. So there's very Hellenistic. But yeah, that hippo god is a version of one of the gods who was behind. Like she's a goddess of I think was it truth and love or something. I can't remember exactly what it is.
And fertility and all of that shit.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah. So Egyptian culture, their gods were assigned different aspects depending on what the country was going through. So that's basically who she is. And as I said, I thought she was great because because usually when you get characters like that, they're there for one purpose and one purpose only, is to be a. I'm trying to find a way to say this.
Exposition.
To be there to be exposition,
some sort of guide and
or to say, hey Mark, hey Stephen, this is what you've been going through, or to be basically the voice of reason, or this is to do stuff that takes you totally out of the story. Does that make sense? Or am I totally talking shit?
No, I get you. I get you, mate. I totally
yes.
Do.
So,
okay, one second. I've got Jake here as well.
Oh, sorry, Jake.
Welcome, Jake.
Hey guys, so sorry, but time zones are difficult.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah.
Don't
time zones are difficult.
Yeah, so we're just talking about the. We're just talking about the hippo god, the barge and the hippo. God.
Yeah, it was great, and because it left me wondering the entire time what's real, and that's what I wanted from this whole series.
Yeah, we got so I'm just mentioning some of the incidents which happened. I mean, we have these scales, and then she takes out their hearts, so they've got no fucking hearts now, and they're on these scales, and in order to understand in order for the scales to be balanced, they have to go and do some searching of their history, so to speak. And this is kind of unique as well because a lot of the stuff they look back regarding their history, Stephen is understanding for the first time because he doesn't know that this is all about Mark. So it's very interesting. So we get Mark's murder victims in one particular room because the psych ward has all these different rooms, and each room represents different memories for Mark. And we have all these murder victims, and the people killed in these rooms were killed by Khonshu's command. But we also see a little boy, and Stephen decides to chase the kid into another room, locking Mark out. And this boy it happens to be Mark's younger brother. Theoretically, it's Stephen's younger brother as well. And he sees Mark as a kid at a family barbecue. Mark and his brother, ditches the barbecue and goes into the woods, into a cave. There's rising water. Even though Steve is a bit like the presence you see in the Ghost of Christmas Past and all of that sort of shit, where he can't really communicate with these people, he is calling out to them, trying to save them, but he knows they're going to die in this rising water. And then we cut to Mark going into a memory of his brother's funeral and his mum being miserable, and she sees Mark as a child and blames him for the death of his brother. Mark has birthdays, but his mother wants nothing to do with him, and she becomes an alcoholic. Now, actually, I'll stop there. So, what did you think of all of that? So, we're getting a backstory now of Mark's childhood and and basically how he ended up being the man that he is. And this also, in turn, kind of shows you how Stephen comes into play. But we'll get to that in a bit. But did you find any of this intriguing? Because this wasn't an action-packed episode, so to speak. This was definitely a backstory episode, understanding our characters. They decided to give us this on the penultimate episode, but that's how it is. How did you find some of this? Jake, regarding understanding Mark's history?
Yeah, that's really did it. I thought the reveal was really good as to the first time that Stephen came about, where Stephen comes from, I
We're
thought.
going to get to that. That's way too ahead there.
Oh, am I?
want to.
Sorry.
No, yeah, no problem.
Yeah, okay. But I mean, them wandering on the boat and kind of seeing, the basic memories. Yeah, without getting too far ahead of us, I really thought when they were looking down the street that was going to be Jake. I really expected a couple of the memories that they peered windows in to be Jake's. And that seemingly wasn't the case, as we find out as we go throughout the episode. So that kind of surprised me. I liked how they kind of interspersed Dr. Dr. Harrow, with that possibly being the real world with what's going on with Tawaret. And the whole thing with them having their hearts yanked out, I was pretty certain that the scales were not going to balance until they had the third heart, and I kind of thought that.
Yeah, that's how I was thinking.
There, like when they came out, and I was like, "That's not going to balance."
I was waiting for Jake to appear this whole fucking time, but we'll get to that in a bit.
Oh yeah.
This episode was Mindscape, Asylum, Flashback, and Afterlife. Don't forget Shutter Island as well, Cheeto. If you probably ain't seen that. Episode's not bad, but I wish the first 20 minutes was that. And then the remaining time is Layla freeing Khonshu. Yeah, I'm going to get to a lot of things regarding episode 6 in a bit, but I will say this, Cousin Cheetah, I agree. Oscar Isaac made this episode, not saved this episode. He made this episode. You know what I mean? Like I said, I did genuinely think there was 2 Oscar Isaacs at one point. Totally forgot what I was watching. You know, in a good sense.
Yeah.
Superb, absolutely superb. You know, I thoroughly enjoyed it.
Yeah, because Oscar Isaac throughout this entire series has been phenomenal. Because I don't care what anyone tells you, it's got to be the hardest job in the world to act opposite somebody who isn't there, because you're going to be playing that person and making it seem like you're having a legitimate conversation with them. Like, I know that Gollum does it in Lord of the Rings, but there's a lot of CGI to do with that. Whereas this,
yeah, but you Andy Serkis is there. He's like in a fucking mocap suit, crawling around. You are seeing him.
Yeah,
but they are interacting with him.
But it's a different sort of performance. There's a lot of like makeup and stuff like that. There's a separation between the people. Whereas this, he's having to act opposite himself. And that's going. I mean, I'm sure there's like somebody there, like holding the mirror or holding lines or doing whatever. But it legitimately looks like he's having a conversation with himself, and this whole time he's actually like moving around, and he feels like, and you can see that this frustration boiling in him. That I'm not this sort of person. I'm a good man. Blah blah. And it's like these 2 parts of his id are 2 halves of a whole. That they're both good people, but one fractured to sort of separate himself from reality. If that makes sense.
Have you ever seen Who Framed Roger Rabbit? I would be shocked if you guys haven't. Watch the making of Who Framed Roger Rabbit. Bob Hoskins is literally acting in front of nothing. You know what I mean? And that for me is phenomenal, because it's one of the. For me, I find and this is a tangent. I'm sorry. Who Framed Roger Rabbit is one of the greatest films I've ever seen. You know what I mean? Because of the filmmaking required to make a movie like that, and that for me is another level. Rest in peace, Bob Hoskins. I'm sorry. Now the last episode will be Khonshu freeing up and wrap up. I agree. We're going to get to that. I'll get to talking about episode 6 near the end. I'm a bit disappointed. Episode 5 is one big hype. It was good for what it was, and Isaac is a national treasure, but the hype fizzled out. I didn't know about any hype, to tell you the truth, and I didn't go in there thinking about hype. And honestly, sometimes following the hype is the worst thing that could ever happen to a product, because then people's expectations are too high, you know. And anyways, before Stephen can go into another room, because obviously he's seeing like birthdays and stuff like that, and his mum's all fucked out of her head now. She's become a miserable person, an alcoholic, and she has a lot of resentment towards Mark. So and Stephen is following Mark, young Mark that is, going up the rooms of their house, and before he can go into another room, our Mark stops him. And then we see teenage Mark leaving home. He's had enough. You know, his dad is still a good man, by the way. People forget about that. His mum was a bit of a crazy bitch, but the dad kept shit together. So just to go another tangent here regarding people going MCU and all of this stuff. Here, the abuser is the fucking mum, not the dad getting the belt out. It's the fucking mum. Yeah. So please, people out there, give Disney some fucking credit regarding this. They're not fucking trying to make all women out to be fucking saints and fucking, the greatest of all time. This mum's a fucking bitch, and this dad is the one who happens to be the knight in shining armor because he doesn't blame his son for the death of the other son. But we can go on to about that in a second. Where are we? Now we see more. We see Mark and Steven now. They're ending up in some sands, and we see some more dead bodies. And at this particular point, Mark has mentioned to. Like we see the scene where Mark mentioned earlier on to Layla regarding what happened to her dad and how everyone was killed and shit like that. And Mark has got a bullet wound in him. All this expedition has been killed. Mark's almost dead, and he's at the statue or the temple of Khonshu. And then Khonshu, he's about to kill himself. He's in the middle of a fucking desert. He's bleeding out. There's nothing to live for. He puts the gun to his head, and then Khonshu calls out to him. And analyzes Mark, notices that he's got a split personality and all of these things, that he's a merc and all of that, and thinks that he's the perfect person to be his avatar. And he tells Mark, be my fist of vengeance. And Mark accepts, and he rises, and because he becomes Moon Knight, his wounds instantly heal, very Venom-like as well. So we saw the birth of Moon Knight. What did you guys think? I'll start with you, Bossman.
I thought it was an awesome scene. I mean, the thing is that I'm going to say something now that you might disagree with. I thought it was very powerful that we saw the abuse, because a lot of kids who watch this, because I mean, even though it's 15 plus, I imagine a lot of kids are watching this.
Yeah, kids are watching this.
And I think for a lot of them, that is their reality, that they're being abused, not being abused, but maybe psychologically abused by a parent. And it's there may be that this hero, that Moon Knight, that Mark is representing that reality for them, that he is a symbol of hope in the darkness of going through. So I think I think the series is making some good points there, that there's always somebody who will help you out. That it's always good to see this as, but also I love the fact that we're getting this character study into who Mark is. That he's this troubled guy with this troubled mum. That he is that he's not a bad guy, but he'll do what he needs to do when he needs to do it. If that makes sense, he's not a emotionless bastard. He's somebody who is still haunted by what happened with his mum, what happened with his brother. And I think it was good that we got to see that depth with him. I just want to see more depth with Steven now. Like, what sort of human being is he? I know that he has his mom and stuff like that. Is there trouble that he's dealing with that maybe Mark doesn't? And is there a sort of, does that create some sort of tension there?
Okay, well, before I pass it on to you, Jake, I thought I thought one of the reveals that might have been Kang or Apocalypse type reveal. Not poking fun at Bossman this time, I promise. Everyone's expecting a Kang sort of reveal at some point. I mean, I'm not looking out for that. I really ain't. Some of the stuff I'm looking out for is stuff that was already hinted to me in this. But once again, I don't want to go ahead of myself. I'll talk about that a little bit later in this review. Jake, so we got the reveal of Moon Knight. We saw how he was born, all of that sort of stuff. How did he find all of that?
Yeah, well, touching first on the backstory bit, I want to call out that I thought it was interesting that there was that bird with a very Khonshu skull in the cave on the way where his brother died. So
I must have missed that. I watched this episode twice.
I must have missed that as well.
Yeah, so right before they go into the cave, Steven looks down and there's like a dead bird body there, and definitely has a Khonshu skull, and he just kind of steps on it as he walks past it. And the camera lingers on it for a couple of seconds. If you go back and look for it, you'll see it. But I think that that might really kind of lend credence to the idea that even Khonshu isn't real. So it's interesting how then Mark would then make that up, the whole thing, because same time when you watch the memory of Mark becoming Moon Knight, it doesn't. I mean, that feels like that might have actually happened to him. And it might be a real moment. And again, I think it's just further genius of the trickery of what's there or not. I'll talk more about that at the end of when we talk about the end of the episode and overall
No
thoughts.
problem. So we cut back to the barge now, and time's running out for our duo. And Hippo Lady buys our boys a bit more time by turning the ship around or something like that. I mean, it's hard to understand what the fuck's going on sometimes. And Mark wants Hippo Lady to help them rescue Khonshu, because even if Mark wakes up in his body, he's got 2 bullet holes in his fucking chest. So that needs to be resolved as well. And with the scales not still being properly balanced, far as Steve is concerned, he needs to see what happens in that room. So Mark does not want Steve to see this. He's adamant. And he has another tantrum, and now we wake up in Harrow's office. And Harrow knows about the split personalities, and he wants to know which one came first. And we go back into Mark's memories again. Was it Stephen who came first? Was it Mark who came first? But when we go back into Mark's memory, he's about to get a beating from his abusive mum, with like his doors locked and everything. And mum's got the belt out and everything. And the fear of the beating basically makes him create Stephen. So we see this young kid, looking at Tomb Buster on the wall and stuff, Dr. Stephen Grant, and that's how he becomes, he's influenced by these sort of, Indiana Jones style movies. And so he becomes Stephen. And Stephen Grant, the character from Tomb Buster, obviously English, so hence the English accent and stuff like that. And Mark basically tries to, then the mum. The funny thing is, what I don't get is the mum comes in, now he's Stephen Grant. But the mum comes in and still beats the shit out of him as Stephen Grant. So I'm like, what the fuck? It made no sense to me, but all right.
Yeah, I felt like maybe there was a change they didn't show there, but there should have been.
Yeah, exactly. And Mark basically tells Stephen that he created this persona to protect himself or protect Stephen to a degree. Make him believe that his mother loved him, but I don't know how he's supposed to think that, considering if he was Stephen Grant as a child, he would have seen his mum beating the shit out of him. But he told him he had a simple life. He worked in the museum, all of that. But this is where it gets very confusing regarding the writing and stuff, because I'm trying to understand what Mark is trying to explain regarding Stephen, but it doesn't make sense to what I've fucking seen. But okay, now Stephen wakes up in Harrow's office, and Harrow's getting more information now. And this is where I'm starting to think to myself, maybe this is a game played by Arthur Harrow regarding Stephen and Mark. He's extracting all this whole time. He's extracting information out of them. There must be a reason behind that. And Arthur Harrow tells Stephen that your mum's dead. Your mum has died. And Stephen doesn't want to believe this. It tells him to take it back. Arthur then pretends to ring up his mum, and the realization and the denial comes to an end regarding Stephen, and then he accepts that his mum is dead, and so he's no longer in denial. And then we see the funeral of his mum and stuff like that, of Mark at the funeral. And we get to see more of his Jewish culture as well, which was really cool, because we all knew that Mark Proctor was a Jewish person. So it's about time we get to see some of that. And before I pass it on to you guys, but finally, Stephen and Mark are talking to each other. And Stephen basically tells Mark, listen, it's not your fault that your brother died. You were just kids. Your mother was horrible to you. She blamed you for something that you shouldn't have been blamed for. And it kind of made me think to myself that Mark is finally forgiving himself. Is Stephen his split personality telling him this, but he is forgiving himself. And it's amazing how during this whole course of these episodes, Stephen has become so much of a stronger character. He's become more confident, and he's become just a more knowledgeable, understanding character. while Mark is kind of having to find himself a little bit again, so to speak, and it's Stephen who's become the bigger man, which is amazing. But there's so much I brought up there. I'm going to throw it to you guys now. I'll start with you, Reverend Jake. So from the moment, so from Harrow and finding out how Stephen was created, and then obviously the self-forgiveness. What do you think of all of that?
Yeah, I think, kind of jumping into the heritage part, I was really kind of happy to see that there was a lot of talk that his family was going to be Hispanic to match Oscar Isaac, who's Hispanic. And so there were questions about whether or not they were going to put the Jewish part in there. I'm really glad they did include it. I also think that there's a bit of a twist incoming, because traditionally in his backstory, his dad fled the Nazis, and so that leads Mark to think his dad's kind of a weak man, and that's why he gets into the military and all of that. And that's kind of what creates that militariness in him. And so I think in this, his dad's weak because his dad's not standing up to the abuse coming from his mom. And they have that one scene where Mark confronts him about that when he goes to leave. And I have a feeling that's him leaving for the military because he can't handle his dad, is being weak and won't defend him against his mom. He's gone through that abuse his entire life. And there was one, so I thought that was kind of interesting how they flipped that. I really liked it. I think it works well. I don't think he's completely forgiven himself yet, because I think we still have that third personality to resolve. And I think that's going to involve a lot of it. Hey, Lowdown. So I think there's going to be a lot more of that to resolve. I don't want to jump too far ahead into the end of the episode, but I think that we're not done inside of Mark's head. And there's going to be some more to do, as much as Cousin Cheeto doesn't want to see it. I'm loving it, though. And I think it's all being done fantastic. And it's a brilliant, brilliant character piece about family tragedy and how that shapes us, and how do we rebound from that and forgive ourselves for our own mistakes. And I think that that's being done so magnificently here. Like you said, you get lost in the fact that this is the same actor playing two roles, and it really is this guy going through this with himself. So yeah, magnifique.
Yeah. Before I pass it on to Bossman, there was no sorry for like dragging out some of the story arcs, but there is no subplots in this fucking episode. It is just one shit we're following. You know what I mean? So usually with the other episodes we can cut between Harrow and Mark, but not this time around. This time it's just full on Mark or full on Steve, just following them. So it's really hard to break it down and finding a decent cutoff point. But on to you, Bossman. From Richard Harrow, from
Arthur Harrow.
Arthur Harrow, from the discovery of Stephen's origins and how he was created, and him feeling that he was the original and Mark was the made up one, to the death of his mother. How did you find, and understanding more about his Jewish heritage as well? How did you find all of that, Bossman?
The thing is that Ethan Hawke is so creepy as that Doctor. I mean, I don't know if I'm trying to think of it. Is he more creepy as
I like him, the Doctor,
as Arthur Harrow?
Yeah.
The guy with the glass in his shoes, or is he more creepy as the Doctor? It's kind of tied for me. I mean, the fact is he's creepy in both performances.
It's the mustache that does it.
I don't know, just something about the way he speaks, the way he stands, the way he's
acting. By the way, he's really good. By the way, Bossman, like he's so different. You feel like they're the same guys, but you also feel they're very different. Like he's really trying to come across as a very approachable shrink, whilst he's a cult leader as the other character.
I'm going to give a proposition to both of you. I want you to think about it for a second while I speak. Do you think that he could possibly be like another manifestation of another part of his psyche? Like it could be one that's trying to keep him in the mortal realm, because the other two seem to be pushing towards leaving the mortal realm. They're going to the field of weeds and all this sort of stuff, whereas he seems to want to keep them sort of tethered to reality. So is he like another part of their psyche? He's like, no, you need to do this. Or maybe he's Jake, or he's another part of their psyche that we've not.
Well, if he's Jake, that'll be fascinating, to tell you the truth. But I don't think he's Jake, simply because we already saw him outside the sarcophagus talking to Mark at the end of episode 4, while Stephen came out of a sarcophagus and there was another sarcophagus still shaking, which I do believe has to play its part. But I'll go on about that a little bit later. But regarding it's either all fake or it's all real.
No,
There's
no,
no
no,
in
no.
between.
What I'm saying is that this is part of the afterlife. That this is a part of his psyche. He's trying to keep him tethered to the mortal realm. That it's part of his connection to the mortal realm. Like in some theologies, like there is a connection. Like, all right, I'll tell a total different story. There's a story in the afterlife where somebody goes into the afterlife to get their dead wife. The thing is, the whole thing of the story is that they can't look back at them or they'll disappear. So it goes all the way through the gates of Hades, get right to the end, and right at the end, he looks back and she's not there because he's obviously they said that if you look back and she won't be there.
He broke the rules.
Yeah, exactly. So this is the sort of thing. There's always a tether that keeps you in the mortal realm. So, like this is basically, this is like, I think it's his tie is that Arthur Harrow is the tether to his mortal life. I thought when we see his mother died, that was great. That was a real, what's the word, connection
Emotional.
with. Yeah, emotional. And the thing is that this performance, but I mean, Oscar Isaac's been great throughout this entire series. This episode was really great. Like the fact is that when he breaks down and starts crying, and then all of a sudden, like he shudders and turns into Stephen, and he says, all right there, Mom. Oh yeah, I'm fucking lost, aren't I? I think I'm in fucking Kansas, and it's great. It's great. It was great, and it was just like I started to smile, and it's like it goes from being like one of the most painful. I mean, I was not tearful, but I was quite emotional at that point. I was like emotionally invested into what was going on, and then he goes into that, and I started to laugh, and I felt that like what does this scene want me to feel? And I think the thing that I think it could be a Cyrus possibly. Just a thought. But I'm gonna pose another proposition to all of you. Do you agree with me that Arthur Harrow is some sort of like his anchor to the mortal realm? In any way, or do you think I'm wrong about that?
Go on, Jake. You're bursting here, man.
No, I mean, like, I feel you, and I think with this, I think because right now they're presenting it as our Arthur Harrow moments, the Dr. Harrow is the only lucidity, and everything else is fake, and that's the line they're trying to sell right now. I personally think that the reality with him on the boat is the real world. He's really died. He's really traveling to the afterlife, and I think that Amit and Harrow in the real world don't know where the statues, the Ushanti from episode 4, and so that they're trying to pull this mind trick game on him while he's halfway's dead and halfway's not dead, using some of that special magic that Amit's got or whatever. And so those scenes we're seeing are them breaking into his mind and trying to pretend to be therapists to get more information about what happened. Because like you'll notice when he mentioned that he ran into Tourette, and because he sees Tourette, and then he freaks out and jumps immediately into the Arthur Harrow stuff. And I think what that is because then Arthur Harrow's all like, "Oh, what's this about a hippo? I'm really interested in that," because he wants to know what other gods are helping Mark, and he wants to know what's really going on.
Yeah,
things happening. But so I think those scenes are kind of like a psychic drill, so to speak, or whatever. And that's kind of my personal belief, but it could also very well be that that's the only reality and the entire show is fake, which I know would totally upset Cheeto.
Well, I do feel that they're going to leave it ambiguous. Like, oh, is it real? Is it fake? I mean, they're going to do that. A bit like how Inception ended.
But I genuinely do believe that this is, as I said, I think the Jacob's Ladder thing is very apt to him because I do believe that Arthur Harrow is his the person who's trying to get him to come back to life. He's trying to bring him back to life. He's the last part of Khonshu that's in him, because considering that that Arthur Harrow himself was Khonshu's previous avatar, it makes sense that he's the part of Khonshu that's still alive inside of him. You know, the start that's trying to keep him as part of the. Maybe I'm reading too much into it.
Well, I feel like
There's
only a handful of seconds have passed, but it feels like a lifetime for Mark and Stephen, because you know they're in that moment of almost dying, so that's being stretched out. You know, like it's a time dilation difference. And regarding Jacob's Ladder, we got a resolution to that. This, like I said, this will be very ambiguous. Let me quickly say what Lowdown's got to say. You think Arthur is God or working with God to make Mark be in the asylum? Why would God, like the God? Like, you know, the MCU's got so many fucking gods. You know what I mean? It puts the Hindu religion to shame. You know, it's unbelievable how many deities they've got, and some of these deities are basically powerful aliens. You know, it's hard to it's hard to know. I don't know, honestly, regarding this particular question. I don't know how to answer it. I don't know, but
I think a lot of my question is really tied to what I was saying a moment ago, where I think that, you know, it's separate, and Harrow is definitely working with a god because he's working with Ahmet.
Well, I mean, he hasn't, but we never saw him unless he's got the statue, because he never had this. He's been guided by Ahmet, but he's not necessarily become Ahmet's avatar yet, because they never got the statue, which was inside Alexander the Great's body at the time when Mark retrieved it. Or Stephen retrieved it, actually. But I don't know. I still don't know.
I guess I don't know.
Yeah, but unless he then picks it up after that, after he shoots him, who knows? So the barge has reached its end of the journey, and the scales have not balanced, meaning they have to go into the underworld. And then we start seeing sand zombies now coming onto the barge, and Mark gets fucked over big time. And then Stephen grows a pair. And he saves Mark, you know, like he fucks these zombies up, man. He's smashing them up into pieces. But one more zombie manages to grab onto Mark and is about to pull him over. And then Stephen stops it by sacrificing himself, so to speak, going overboard and saving Mark. And then you see Mark in the sands, and he's trying to run back, but he's getting slowly, you know, stuck. And then he turns. He's almost like he's turning to sand, but he's almost like he's being frozen, you know, at the same time. And he just turns into a sand guy. And he's theoretically, is he dead? I mean, I kind of felt that Stephen kind of played his purpose up to this moment, so they got rid of him. Like he knew that he wasn't real, so he was expendable in that sense regarding the show. Who knows? But it was heartbreaking.
It was a shame because the thing is, he's been an interesting part of the show so far. That he's been that fractured psyche sort of part. That plus the thing is that he's a great character. I hate using that, but just in the show in general.
He's had a fantastic arc, man. Like his from like cowardly, mumbling idiot to, you know, a very self-confident man, and, you know, who gave his life for somebody else or himself, really. It was fascinating. But the barge reaches the end, and because of Stephen's sacrifice, the scales then become balanced. And then all of a sudden we get like a light, a yellow light, like a sunrise or a sunset. And Mark is able to return back to the land of the living, I guess, even though he's got 2 bullet holes in his chest. But that's what it seemed to me, unless I'm wrong.
I think he passed on to the field of reeds.
Yeah,
the field of reeds.
Yeah.
But she mentioned how that's why she turned the boat. Remember the hippo lady? She turned the boat. She moved it to a different direction because he wanted to go back to life. He wanted to go back to living again.
Yeah.
And so she just took the boat to a different direction. And he, you know, but they also mentioned the fact that, you know, if he did come back to life, he would still be in a dying position because he's got 2 bullet holes in his chest. So this is where Khonshu comes into play. And I think she was asking, I think Stephen begged her like, can you get Khonshu? Can you help us free him or something along those lines? So they might be using her to free Khonshu, Hippo Lady. But nevertheless, this is how the episode ended. So before I pass it on to you guys, no Jake in this episode, none whatsoever. So I'm more pissed off. I'd rather he not even show his face now, because if we're only going to get Jake for the final fucking episode, I'm going to be pissed, because we've got to deal with a lot here. You know, how did we bring in? We can't bring in a new character at the end and then tie up so much shit. This whole season has had fuck all of Moon Knight. Fuck all. Now, as much as I've enjoyed this show, I'm also torn on the fact that we've got no Moon Knight in it. And for me, that's a problem. Yeah, that's a big problem. I want to see, like, episode 1, we saw Moon Knight at the very end. We got maybe 3 or 4 minutes in episode 2, probably the most of him in episode 3. No Moon Knight in episode 4. No Moon Knight in this episode. Come on. Yeah, you know, this is really fucking stupid as far as I'm concerned. If you're going to make a show about a superhero called Moon Knight, and this was supposed to take, even though there were moments in this series which felt very dark, especially in episode 4 where the guy's being cut up by those mummy zombies, I wanted to see the brutality from fucking Moon Knight, man. You know what I mean? I want to see his brutality. Stephen is dead, by the way. So if he does get resurrected, how they're going to resolve that? Obviously, Khonshu is the way they're going to resolve that. But how they're going to free him? Who's going to free him? You know, how do they go about that? Is it Hippo Lady? What's with the psych wards? There's 2 psych wards. There's the one where he's getting sedated, and there's one where he's on the barge. I mean, what the hell's going on here? You know, that's going crazy. Remember the phone in episode 1 with all the list of names, and mainly Layla, except for one name was somebody else. That person hasn't come into play. Sorry?
Duchamp.
Yeah, we haven't seen him.
Yeah.
And obviously the rescue of Khonshu, as I mentioned earlier. So there is, I might have missed something out here or two, but there is a lot to do in episode 6. So much so, I feel it can't get all wrapped up. What do you guys think? I'll start with you, Gary.
I thought it was. See, this is I'm going to disagree with you in that I found these last 2 episodes to be great, because I think within because the thing is that it's. I'm going to compare this to a movie I love, so give me a minute. Like, this reminds me a lot of Inception, where they're in a dream world, but it still has stakes in it. This is in the afterlife. I still felt it had stakes. Like, I felt like I know what they want to achieve. I know what they're doing. I know what needs to happen. That's actually needs to come out of the underworld and stop Aramet being resurrected by Harrow. That boom. That's all we need. And I think that. I think the thing is that the reason we haven't got Moon Knight is because there was a struggle, there was a strife between in the body, in the psyche itself, and that needed to be sorted out. And now it has. Now there is a peace there. Now there is a balance.
Can I interrupt you, Bossman, if you don't mind, very briefly?
Go ahead.
I get you. I do get you, and I've said I've enjoyed this show. But if you're going to call a show, however you write it, your explanation is great. I get it. But if you're going to write a show, put fucking Moon Knight in it. You know what I mean? Put fucking Moon Knight in it if you're going to write a show. They have written a show with Moon Knight hardly being in it. And that's what pisses me off. You know, you might have not been in episode 1. We got fuck all of him in episode 1. And we've got fuck all of him in episode 4 and 5. This show is called Moon Knight. I want to see fucking Moon Knight. However you fucking portray it. You know what I mean?
I disagree. Can I take up your defense here, Gary?
Yeah.
Sure.
I mean, honestly, the way I see it is that, I mean, you oftentimes have a book, you know, and I'm thinking about a comic book or whatever, where the title, you know, just because the title is superhero name, it doesn't mean the entire book is about that character as a superhero. It's about that character, whether or not, and that they are a superhero. And so, to me, seeing Mark Spector isn't any different than seeing Moon Knight. I don't have for the story to be called Moon Knight. He doesn't have to be in Moon Knight form the entire time. But instead, for me, the story has to revolve around the concepts of what does it mean for this character to be Moon Knight. And I think they've hit that on the head. Because for this character in all of the comic runs, he's schizophrenic or DID, whatever you want to call it, and he, as part of that, he gets really violent and kills people, and they've tackled that to a degree. Now, going into the wider selection of things, that you were saying there, Sam, that maybe here where I'm disagreeing with Gary is I have been really disappointed with all of the threads they've left open that you mentioned. I mean, if they're not going to have Jake in the show, why fucking even bother with the scene where Jake takes control and there's that little mystery about, well, who killed all those guys?
Yeah.
If they're not going to deal with it, then why? They call it a limited series. They've had every indication that there will not be a season 2. And so then why put those threads in there? If you're just going to wrap this up, and it doesn't matter if they wrap it up that he's really Moon Knight or that he's really in a psych ward, either way, if you're going to wrap it up, why put those threads in there? There are so many open threads. And I try to believe that they can do that. But every time I want to believe that they're going to pull this off, my head pops into my head 2 words: Ralph Boner. And we've never really talked about WandaVision, together as a group, but I loved WandaVision. The first couple of episodes hit my childhood heart right in the nostalgia that it always had. And I was super excited for everything, but then when they pulled the Ralph Boner joke, I felt like they were making fun of my hopes and dreams for what the MCU would do. And it crushed me. And it loved the series, hated the finale, and it left me with a distaste in my mouth. And I'm a little worried I'm going to get more of it here. I don't want the entire thing to be in his head. I want the season 2 of Moon Knight. I want more. I want to hear about Bushman, who we got mentioned by name, but we haven't seen. I want to see, more of Moon Knight. I want to see Moon Knight be violent. I want to see Jake Spectre, like you're saying. But
Amit as well, Jake. You're like, what the fuck going on with that? You know what I mean? Like, you got to do all of this in one episode next week if they can. It's ridiculous.
They gotta be trying to just hide season 2 to make that a surprise announcement. And that's the only thing I can think of, because
even then they need some sort of wrap up.
The season's a fuck.
They need some sort of finale wrap up. I mean, I don't want them to end season 1 if they do a season 2 with the resolution being episode 1 of season 2. What the fuck? You know what I mean? And then what? We're going to go into a whole new bloody storyline. Like they need to resolve. They need to get some sort of resolution. And they need to wrap up so many threads. It's unreal. And the fact that we haven't seen Jake yet, and we might not even see him, by the way. There's nothing guaranteed now. Because I was willing to put both my fucking testicles on the line that we would see him today. We genuinely would. You know what I mean? And now I've lost him. You know what I mean? So I put my sister on the line that we would see fucking Stephen Strange in WandaVision. That never materialized. But at least WandaVision had 9 episodes. This has only got fucking 6. Yeah, so I don't know how it's going to wrap itself up. Sorry?
Well, these are longer.
Yeah, I agree.
But as I said, I'm actually liking the fact that we're getting this sort of like character study of Moon Knight, of who Mark Spector and Stephen Grant are. Now, the thing is that I'm actually with you that you shouldn't be called that again. It is about the characters, but then there should be a boss fight at the end with Iron Knight or with Arthur Harrow having his face caved in by Flaming Moon Knight. That's what I want to say.
I think we're still getting.
I think we are going to get.
And he'll probably have the power of Amit as well. Be Amit versus Khonshu Super Showdown.
I'll be up for that. But yeah, but also, I mean, as I said, I've enjoyed. This has been my favorite Marvel series so far, just because it's just been a very focused character study of a fractured personality. Like a few days ago now, I was watching the film Split, and this series reminds me so much of Split. So much. I mean, like, even though McAvoy is playing 20 on, I think, was it 26 or 27? 23 or 24.
He's superb in that film.
23, 24 psychologies. In this, we're getting 2. And Oscar Isaac is, even though McAvoy is really good in Split, Oscar Isaac is so much better in this than McAvoy was, because McAvoy is a little hamming it up in some of the performances with hair. There's no hamming it up. There's no eye rolling. There's literally, you feel they're 2 different human beings who inhabit this human vessel and stuff like that. And it's just like it's been so interesting to see the struggle, the force, what caused it, that we get to see the hurt and the pain. And you know what? I love the fact that our hero is vulnerable, and that even though he's this badass mercenary, all he wanted was his mother's love, and that's something that even if we're not superheroes, we want. We want our parents' approval. We want our parents' love, and the fact that he was given nothing but abuse for something that wasn't his fault is something that a lot of, as I said, a lot of children can guarantee was. So if the story of the if the message of the series is that they've done a really good thing, and it will be a tremendous series at the end of it. There you go.
I just want to quickly read some comments here. 1 second. Lowdown Show says Jake is a little too late to be introduced. Maybe they tease Jake or have him at the end, which would not. Yeah, I don't want that. I mean, I don't know. Like the idea, even if he does come in episode 6, like we got to get to know this guy and resolve this fucking episode, this whole season at the same time. It feels a bit weird. I mean, he does seem like the person who could replace Steven. Now Steven's gone, but anyway, the series made me appreciate Oscar Isaac even more. I like how different it is, but a superhero TV show, not so much. I'll tell you what, regarding this episode, you can agree with me or not, but as much as I did like this episode, it is a filler fucking episode. We haven't progressed the story. Like he's in purgatory. He's in bloody limbo. I want to continue with the story at hand in the real world, whatever that may be, to tell you the truth. But, with him being shot and having to now do this side quest of coming back to life again, this is a filler episode.
Can I ask you a question, Sam? And I don't mean to interrupt you. Actually, this is for Jake as well. Wouldn't you have complained if you didn't really understand where these characters have gone from, what sort of people they are, and stuff like that? I mean, and again, this isn't a got your question; it's a legit question.
Yeah.
Go on.
Sorry. No, go ahead.
Go on.
I just want to really quickly hit on that as well. I agree. I think that somewhere in the season, this information, this backstory had to be. It's out of place, which I can see kind of makes it feel like filler. I don't feel like any of it was filler, though, because we get a lot of backstory information that we need to understand about Mark, that we wanted to understand about Mark, as well as progressing there is some sort of story progression about whether or not this is real and whether or not it's all taking place in his mind. So there's that tiny story progression, and I think that's out of order makes it feel like filler. I wouldn't call it filler. Sorry, your point, your point, Sam.
I'm sorry, I kind of lost. You got to give me your question again, boss man.
So I'm saying, if this episode, let's say, for example, let's say like middle of the episode, he found his way back into out of the underworld into the mortal plane again, and then the season ended. Would you have complained that we didn't get enough character study with the two characters inside the body?
I would have first of all added more than the thing is, I feel this sort of show, with the way it's going with the last episode, I feel it needs another episode. You know what I mean? I really do. I feel like and that's my thing. I don't mind a bit of character development, but knowing where we are at this moment with so many so many check marks to tick off, it feels a bit weird. Like, you guys saw Peacemaker, yeah?
Yeah.
They resolved the thing with his dad in episode 7. So come episode 8, we weren't thinking about his fucking dad anymore because it was done. It was dealt with in the penultimate episode. Some things need to be ticked off before the final episode, so we can just focus on that. And unfortunately, nothing's been ticked off. We've got more fucking answers. I mean, we saw none of the other characters from the ward, by the way. Here he is sharing this ward with all the people in his life, including the woman he claimed to be his wife. And the only persons we saw were the orderlies very briefly holding Mark down, and obviously Arthur Harrow. Like, there was nothing. You could go on about character development. I saw no development from the other characters in this. I mean, it's an overall thing. I just do not know where the final episode is going to be. I feel like it needs to be over an hour to deliver, in my opinion. There's a lot to fucking unpack, and like I said, I need to be satisfied. Yeah, you could leave certain things, and we could be a bit ambiguous and leaves things open for a second season, but I need to be satisfied regarding this season that a lot of the boxes have been ticked off, and Jake not being introduced at all is one of the biggest things. But I think they've only doing that, but they don't want 3 personalities. They only want 2 at a time. And now Steven's gone. I think Jake will come in, but I'll probably be wrong about that.
I hope they save Steven. I
hope so as well, because again, it's just me. I'm usually not the biggest fan of. By the way, Jake, this is nothing against you, but I'm usually not a fan of American actors doing British accents or British actors doing American accents. No, but
I'll just do a good American accent, dude.
No, but I'll be like, all right, I'll give you a perfect example of what I mean. Like, for example, like
Don Cheadle.
Like Don, well, not only does Don Cheadle, but like
he's the worst, mate.
He is the worst. But I mean, like, all right, I'll try the other way as well. Like, I'm trying to think of a guy who does American, like, I don't know.
Andrew Lincoln. No, and everyone thought Andrew Lincoln was American until they found out he was fucking British. You know, there are Stephen Graham. He played God name. What's the name of that American gangster? That real life one.
Muggsy Bogues.
Robert De Niro played him.
Al Pacino.
Al Pacino. He played Al Pacino in Boardwalk Empire. He was so fucking good,
Al
man.
Al
Capone.
I should know this being an American.
And like, don't get me wrong. There are. I think American actresses do a better British accent than American actors.
Yeah,
but that's a whole fucking tangent.
But what I'm saying is that it's a great Stephen Grant is a great character. Like, you know, he's bookish. He's like, you know, sort of like he's a little bit, you know, cold cocked by his boss. You know, he's a bit nebbish. He's a bit, you know, bookish. You know, he's a lot of things.
But he gets a pass from me, Bossman. He gets a pass. You know why? Because he's a made up character in Mark's mind. You understand? So if his accent's not spot on, it gets a pass because he was just pretending to be.
I think Oscar Isaac says it's fine.
So since we're talking accents, I want to know this from you guys. Dr. Stephen Grant, the movie character, how was that accent? Because my
American.
No, he's not American. In the movie that because there's that poster that Mark has in his childhood room.
You see a VHS of it.
They opened the episode with it last, or they opened the hospital with the last time. Is he's supposed to be the idea is that Mark got his accent by mimicking that movie. So my question for you guys is that small scene in that movie, how was his accent?
Well, was that actor American?
I have no idea, but not
because if he was, then congratulations, he did a good job.
As I said,
it sounds realistic. Doesn't matter where he's from.
Yeah, Oscar Isaac's British accent's fine. I mean, I could put on the map where I think he's from, because I'd say like South London somewhere. I don't even
know where. I couldn't make out where he's from.
It's definitely it's definitely Cockney. He's like because he says stuff like,
I guess,
having a laugh and all that shit.
He's using the terminologies. That's for sure. He's using our slang and our lingo, but I'm not sure where I could place that accent. You know, is it London? I'm not even sure.
Well, and that's what I talked about back in the very first episode review we did. I was all like, well, what if that's on purpose because it's not a real person?
Yeah, and that's why I give it a pass, because he made up this character since he was a kid, and so he probably was never good at accents in the first place.
But as I said, I love their interaction. Like Matt's a great character, Steve's a great character, and as I said, they're both brilliantly acted by Oscar Isaac. So
James Marshall from Buffy the Vampire Slayer, superb English accent. Yeah. Sean Astin, from fucking Lord of the Rings, playing Samwise Gamgee, West Country accent there, fucking nailed it beyond belief. You know what I mean? There are some American actors who do good English accents.
No.
Eddie Murphy does great English accents.
No. I'm saying that I'm usually not a fan of either, just because as I said, like it's usually more missed than hit on both sides. Like,
Daniel Day-Lewis is Irish. His fucking Bill the Butcher cutting in Gangs of New York. His New York accent was so spot on, and somebody who's not even from America but could understand that he was specifically doing a New York accent. It was amazing, man. It was so amazing. I loved it.
I don't know. I hear some of those accents and I'm like, oh gods. Like Benedict Cumberbatch is terrible.
Oh
yeah. I agree.
Make him British already, please. We can say we pulled in one from another dimension, and I never have to hear that ever again.
Tobey Maguire?
Huh?
What?
Tobey Maguire?
Tobey Maguire was okay. Tom Holland's is pretty good.
I meant Tom Holland.
You mean Andrew Garfield? Tobey Maguire's American. I was going to say,
yeah, right.
Sorry,
Tom Holland. Tom Holland's is pretty good. I'll give him that. Now, I've never lived in New York, so I can't pretend to be an expert on the different New York accents. But when I hear it, I don't realize that he's British. And then that's kind of if I can be surprised when I find out that they're British, that's when I'm happy.
Andrew Garfield as well. Andrew Garfield's accent was pretty decent. But yeah, as I said, I'm usually not a fan either way. But as I said, it's just because it's more missed than hit. But saying that though, these performances are great. And what I'm hoping for next episode, this is what I'm hoping for, is we get Layla we get in the real world, we cut to Layla trying to bring him back. So maybe like she's like trying to free, like maybe this whole time she's been trying to free Khonshu. Like we see come back and we see like her holding like we see Khonshu saying, I was trying to hear you from the outer world. And
it's become Bane now. Okay.
That was good. But then we see, maybe we see a thing of the hippo goddess on the thing, and maybe that they break that, and the hippo.
Just so you know, Bossman, but she was with him the whole time. So, like, I mean, how she, like, this guy's bleeding out to death. How's she got time to get the bloody statue? Unless it's in the same place. I don't know. Yeah. You know what I mean?
The hippo goddess is booked for next episode, according to IMDb. So
I did like her.
We'll expect to see more of her, and I think we're going to get a lot of answers there. Kind of wrapping up and moving into next episode talk. I think that really we are going to find out that everything that we saw took place in the asylum. It's not what I want, but it's what I think they're going to do. And if I had what I wanted, we would finish up getting him out of the asylum. We would save Khonshu, stop Amit, and then introduce Jake as a kind of an end of the episode teaser to season 2, kind of like how they did with at the end of Loki. You find out you're in another dimension. I think at the end of episode 6, finding out that there's also Jake in there is going to be the kind of big plot twist, and that leads to season 2. I would love that.
My money is on the asylum scenes being all fake, and this whole time Harrow's pumping him for information and manipulating him. And I feel that, but at the same time, I do feel they're going to leave it ambiguous, thinking, was it real? Was it not real? You know what I mean? Let's do fucking 30 threads about it and talk about it on the internet for the rest of the time. You know what I mean? Or until season 2 comes out. That's how they're going to leave it, in my opinion. Very ambiguous.
I don't know. I mean, because the thing is that that's already been done, as I say, pivotally by Inception, where they do it
in various things, man.
But that's the best version. That's the best version of it for me personally. But
if it's a spinning thing.
A lot of these films are trying to be the MCU version of this, the MCU version of that. I think this is the MCU version of Inception, and therefore they will reuse it. I don't want them to, but I think it's that.
I'm still thinking MCU version of Shutter Island, personally.
Well,
it's so good.
Sorry?
I don't know.
I haven't seen Shutter Island.
Okay. So I'm giving too much away then.
Well, I've seen Inception, and this reminds me more of that than it reminds me of Shutter Island, to be honest with you.
You've seen Shutter Island as well, yeah?
Yes, I have seen Shutter Island.
Yeah. Okay.
I need to watch it.
I get where you come from, because it's set in a mental hospital, but I get what you mean.
Yeah.
But what I'm hoping we see, as I said, we see him coming back to the mortal realm, and we see him, turn into Moon Knight and kick a lot of ass. And we see him in maybe a fight with Al Harrow, who's now in Aminette, playing dress robe or whatever.
It's weird in a way. Like I feel like you got like two. Let me reload Dan's comment. I'm surprised they didn't have a post-credit scene this episode. I think they'll have two post-credit. I'm not sure about two, but they'll definitely have one. Which will leave which will be the ambiguity of whether this is real or not, and that's how the post-credit scene will be, leaving us making us scratch our heads and talking about it. But I regarding what you said, Bossman, I just regarding Amit being this threat, I haven't seen it at all. I mean, it's all been Harrow. And yeah.
There is the one point at the very end of the episode when they're trying to get to Osiris or whatever, when Tawaret agrees to turn the boat around, is because she says all of these extra souls are being judged too early. And that kind of implies that back in the real world, Harrow did get the statue and did free Amit. And so I'm kind of curious about it, because I heard that and I was like, oh crap, so stuff's really still happening in the real world. And that's why they headed to that gate of Osiris. But then during the fight with the sand zombies, Steven grabs the rudder and turns them, trying to get the ship to right itself so he can save Mark. And I think that in that instance, when he did that, he steered them away from Osiris's gate so they can't go back to the land of the living like Tawaret was trying to get going. And then during that time where they're kind of in between places, the scales finally balanced because he got rid of he got rid of Steven, and that immediately flushed him into the field of reeds. So that's kind of what I visually saw happening, but at the same time, that doesn't make sense because I'm still hooked on, and I called it out again in episode 1 review, that little girl. Did it suck getting rejected from the field of reeds? So that little girl at the very beginning of the very first episode knows that he's getting rejected from the field of reeds. So why do we see him in there at the end of this episode? And I don't have a good answer or any kind of good theory to it, but it's something that I've constantly kept my mind on throughout the show. Why did he get rejected from the field of reeds? But here we see him in it. And that, to me, again, ties into what you said. There's too many check boxes that we need to check off next episode. They need at least an hour and a half episode. It's not going to be enough.
Could it be that they're leaving these threads open for maybe season 2? Because in my opinion, there should be a season 2.
Yeah, have a season 2. But then more like Bushman would be a good cliffhanger for season 2.
And also that Arabian guy who's doing the jousting.
He's supposed to come back, but the guy who killed Layla's father and stuff like that, he would be a good antagonist for next season. But we haven't even had really, other than in hearsay, we haven't even had a hint of him in other capacities. So whatever we got now that needs to be dealt with now.
I think they can save Jake for next season as well.
You don't think we'll get him at all this season?
No. So hold on.
Blackout explanation.
There's two things. There's what I want to happen and what I think actually is going to happen. What I actually think is going to happen, and I think we have limited series. There's no season 2. I don't think there's a season 2. Now, I would like for there to be a season 2, and I would like for that to be I'd like to tease Jake at the very end of next episode, and then season 2 be a lot about learning about Jake the same way we learned about Mark and Steven, because Jake's apparently the violent one in this situation. So I'd like to see more of that.
Jake's the violent one. The funny thing is Jake and Mark, if Jake does come into play, and considering we only know Jake through the blackouts and him possibly being in that sarcophagus, which never got open, by the way, I do feel that bringing him in the final episode would I don't know if it would be necessarily be a hindrance, but I also feel that he is too similar to Mark. They're very, very similar in people. I mean, just one happens to be a bit more bloodthirstier. BSP says, here's my theory. Steven is condemned. Mark has moved one, but the third personality, which was trapped in the coffin, will take over the body. Well, apparently some heavy spoilers suggested that we have seen glimpses of of Jake, but we haven't come to realize that it was Jake. And I don't know. Maybe. I mean, the funny thing is, if Jake comes into play, well, we've already seen Steven's origin stories. What the fuck is Jake's? You know what I mean? Like, where did he?
I thought it was going to be that scene at when he broke down outside of the Shiva, if I'm pronouncing that correctly, outside of the funeral rite. When he had that first breakdown, and I really thought, okay, boom, this is the birth of Jake, and I'm just like, yep, here's Jake, said it out loud, and then it ended up being Steven again, calling his mom, and my girlfriend made me admit that I was wrong, and that hurt. But yeah, I there's got to be some Jake in here somewhere this season, if there's going to be a season 2.
Okay, so this is a penultimate episode. I mean, what have you two thought about this season so far? Because I'm going to tell you, and this is by quite some distance, this has been the best Disney Plus Marvel thing they've done, in my opinion.
Loki might.
Go on.
That's all I had.
I like Loki, but I feel like Loki ended with like a massive cliffhanger, which I'm not sure has actually transferred itself into everything else we've seen in the Marvel cinematic and television universe since. I thought WandaVision was superb. I think the final episode let it down big time. It went with the cinematic Marvel formula, and it never necessarily needed that. WandaVision is superb. I've actually liked a lot of their shows in a way. Like, you wanted a wham bam thank you ma'am with fucking Captain America and Winter Soldier, and you got action scenes in every episode. I thought the opening action scene was one of the best things I've seen in the Marvel Cinematic Universe, with Sam Wilson being Falcon, tracking down Barak the Leaper, fighting on the planes and stuff like that.
Yeah.
Fantastic. And I love seeing the character arc of Bucky just becoming Bucky Barnes again, and no longer the Winter Soldier, and obviously Sam Wilson becoming Captain America. People don't realize how good those things are. I thought maybe his speech at the end was shit, but fair enough. It was those sort of things are pretty good. Hawkeye was a decent family Christmas sort of thing. It was good to see Jeremy Renner, Hawkeye, get his own show and all of that. Even What If was excellent. I think people underestimate What If. It was so well done.
Yeah,
it's really hard to say where this is quite original, because this is somebody we really don't know, and I very much appreciate. But it's very hard to judge this, boss man. Let's get the final episode out of the way, and then I'll really give it my my full-on opinion on how good the show is.
That's more than fair. It's just because, again, I've loved this character study into these two guys, and I feel that I know who they both are, and that they're both unique individuals. As I said, it reminded me a lot of Split, it reminded me a lot of Inception, which are films I both love. So it made me just that I love those films a lot. So I was like thinking, all right, this is a superhero film. All right, I can get into it. Oh, superhero series anyway. I'm just hoping that next episode is a big blow off fight, so that it makes you happy, it makes me happy, because I love superhero fights as well, and that it is a big monster.
It's more than that, though. It really is more than a big boss battle at the end. It's more than that. Like, you need to tick a few things off,
You said there, Gary, that you feel like you've really gotten to know these characters. But, my immediate thought to that is, at least in regard to Steven, is there anything else to know? What else is there to know about Steven? He's gone through this arc. I feel like his whole arc is really completed. I mean, Mark maybe has a little bit more to do on his arc still because he's got to handle things with Layla. And I think even if this is all a dream,
Bushman.
Yeah, well, they could skip around that and get away with it. But I think that even if this is all a dream, he needs to resolve it in his head in order for his head story to be complete and for him to heal and for this to have a full season arc. So he's still, even if it isn't real, has to complete the stuff with Layla. And that kind of ties into, how is Mark going to deal with all of these other things? There's things to know about him, but Steven, his arc is really done. And I don't really know what purpose he can serve in a story. As much as I want them to revive him, I think they will if they continue the show, but I don't know where his character goes from here. And I feel like maybe we learned too much.
Yeah, sometimes you need like that shocking death scene or somebody you didn't want to die, and it's unfortunate, but that's it. Honestly, if he never comes back, that'll be great movie telling, in my opinion, because the thing with superhero films, and would it be mainly more DC than MCU, but they love bringing people back from the fucking death, and I really wouldn't want that personally. But if they can make it plausible, I'll see how I feel about it.
I agree with you. I hate when they bring characters back from the dead, but let's just not kill them in the first place, because I want stories. And this goes into Batman real quick. For me, Batman villains are repeat villains. The Riddler doesn't just go on one crime spree and you never hear from him again. He's the Riddler because he does it, escapes, does it again, gets away with it, does it again, and there's this repeat. And the same is true, in my opinion, for all good villains in comic books. And all of the MCU movies have the same problem. Well, not everyone, but almost all of them have the same problem of killing off their villain and being done with it. And so I don't think we need that for Steven either.
See, this is the thing that DC does differently, is that they keep their villains like Shazam. That villain, the one that died was Ares, God of War, but that's because he's a god and they can't really have a god level. But Aquaman, Submariner was captured. Black Mantis was still around. And stuff like that. But there are DC MCU villains that are still around.
For me, Baron Zemo, when people say that Thanos was the first guy to beat the Avengers, but Baron Zemo beat him.
Oh yeah,
he beat him. He won. He split the Avengers up. That was his whole. The only thing he never got to do was kill himself. But his whole plan was to split the Avengers up. He did it, and he's a fantastic villain. My favorite MCU villain. So happy to see him back in Captain America: Winter Soldier. Glad they did not kill him off in that either. I was absolutely gutted that they killed Batroc the Leaper. What the fuck were you doing, man? Don't kill Batroc the Leaper. But I was so gutted.
He got 3 movies.
I love Batroc the Leaper. He's a great character, man. He's so funny. The UFC guy who plays him, he's actually a really nice guy. He's one of the nice guy fighters, but he's playing the real villainous guy, and he just makes me laugh. His Frenchiness makes me laugh so fucking much, yeah. And I was gutted when they killed him off, but anyway, we'll see. But I want my bad guys to in some of these scenarios. I want my bad guys to win. It makes it more fun, enjoyable when the bad guys win, just so our good guys can come back and have another shot at it, or maybe not.
Yeah. And I think they're coming around to that idea in some of their newer stuff. Like they've kind of stopped killing off villains every time. I think that's really more of a phase 1, phase 2 issue. But like, if Thanos wins, like you said, really, if you think about it, to a degree, Kang wins in Loki.
Mm-hmm.
So
Gore the God Butcher, you think he's going to live through 4-4? Because that's a significant character. He's dead, yeah?
I don't know if you can move forward with him butchering people. No, I think they kill him.
See, I think he'd be a good villain for an Avengers movie, but I don't know if they're going to go down that route or not. It's you don't know when it comes to Avenger films if where things are going at the moment. It's been a bit quiet on the waterfront, so to speak. But anyway, look, that's a whole fucking other tangent right now. I'm going to give this episode a 7 out of 10. What about you guys, Bossman?
I'll give it a solid 9, because anything that makes me go from sad to happy to intense to worried to a lot of other emotions that. And plus, the fact is that I think this is a really important episode for abused people, that they're not alone. And I think that makes it a really important episode, in my personal opinion.
And Jake?
I'm going to also give it a 9, to be honest. I really would have given it a 10 if they would have found a way to work Jake in there. I think that was the one thing that was missing. I think, going back to the day that Cheetah was able to make it here with us, we talked a lot about his feelings on the psych ward scene, and I've often called it the required psych ward scene, and they did something new with it, and that's hard to do. And I thought they were going to do something new with it, like how Legion did. And again, if you haven't watched Legion, go find it. It's fantastic. At least the first season, second a little less, but still good. Anyways, so I was really amazed and surprised that they pulled something new off. I like the duality of it being a construct that his mind's created, along with maybe he's really there, along with maybe it's how he's learning about himself in order to balance the scales. And I thought the way that they bled all three of those things together was a new and interesting way to look at doing that kind of a scene. So, I mean, in the end, it might find out that this is all in his head, which I know is going to upset some people. But I think if you do that story in an interesting way, I'm not going to be bored of it. And I wasn't bored all episode long. So as much as analytically, when I review it, I can say this has been done, I didn't feel that when I watched it. And that's what's important to me. So again,
yeah, it's all in the execution. All right, then, guys, look, I'm absolutely starving right now. I've got some barbecue pork bellies on the fucking smoker, which has got my name on it. But before I attend to those bad boys, I just want to say that tomorrow we'll be doing a review on Star Trek Picard Season 2, Episode 9, I think, and which is the penultimate episode of that particular show. And I think Ginger Greek will be doing... Oh, no, he won't be. He's boycotting. He's boycotting
Halo
because you guys know Angry Joe. He's been ripping the shit out of Halo, saying it's a pile of shit, and because of that, Verizon has been removing his videos because they don't want all the negativity. And the funny thing is, the Halo shows, there's just not enough action, if any. You got episodes with no action at all, and because some of the action. You can't make it too generic like an 18 show, but because the action we did get in episode 1 and episode 5 is actually really good, but you need more action, than just that. And it's trying to be very Games of Thronesy when sometimes you want it to be some things. There's like elements of genericness that it needs to be in there. Like, don't try to be smarter than what you are. And this show's going down that route a little bit, so to speak. But like with a lot of shows, you always catch people at the turning of their lives. Like when we watch Iron Man, Robert Downey Jr. is like, he has a change of personality. All these characters are having a change of personality, so to speak, a change of ideology. Sorry, and it's the same with this show as well. Like Master Chief, he's having a change of ideology. What was he like a few years before that? We never got to fucking see. We just see him now change of fucking ideology, and it really pisses me off. I want to see him just go around shooting the fuck out of people. But anyways, that's enough of me ranting about that. But yeah, catch us tomorrow for Star Trek. And to everyone else out there, don't forget to like, share, subscribe to NerdTube, the greatest YouTube channel you never heard of. Take care. Bye-bye.